The best revenge is a life well lived, but it took me years to understand what that really meant. For a long time, I thought revenge had to be loud, dramatic, and undeniable. I imagined standing on a stage, pointing back at everyone who doubted me, and proving them wrong in one glorious moment. But life doesn't work like that. It isn't a movie scene where you get the perfect line, the perfect comeback. Instead, it's a quiet, uneven journey with victories that sometimes only you can see and wounds that take years to heal. I grew up in a world where people always had something to say. My voice was too quiet, my dreams too unrealistic, my appearance too ordinary. Every step I took seemed to be under the scrutiny of people who never believed I could amount to anything. The whispers behind my back were sometimes louder than the words to my face, and I carried them with me like invisible weights. You'll never make it. You're not good enough. Stay in your lane. Those words burrowed into me, planting doubt where hope used to grow. In school, I was never the brightest, the fastest, or the most admired. I wasn't the one who got picked first, nor the one teachers praised with glowing recommendations. I was the one sitting quietly in the middle, watching others rise. My ideas were dismissed before I could finish explaining them. Even my family, though not unkind, carried an undercurrent of skepticism. Whenever I talked about wanting more, a life bigger than what we knew, my words were met with raised eyebrows or soft sighs. Be realistic, they said, as if my dreams were some kind of dangerous indulgence. And so I kept my ambitions hidden, folded tightly like secret letters I never sent. But deep down, I knew I wanted more. I wanted to create, to live with purpose, to travel beyond the small borders of the life I had been handed. I wanted to show them, not through words but through action, that I could build something meaningful. Yet the problem was, every time I stumbled, I felt their voices growing louder, echoing in my head, telling me they had been right all along. The turning point came not in a moment of anger, but in one of exhaustion. I realized one night, staring at my reflection in the dim light of my room, that I had been living for them, living to either prove them wrong or avoid their ridicule. My life had become a reaction to their opinions, not a reflection of my own desires. That was the night I decided that the greatest revenge wasn't proving them wrong. It was building a life where their voices didn't matter at all. It didn't happen overnight. My journey was slow, uneven, and filled with failure. I started with small steps, reading books that expanded my world, writing down my thoughts in journals, and setting goals that seemed impossible at the time. I worked jobs that barely paid the bills, but with every bit of money I saved, I invested in my growth. I learned skills that no one thought I could master, built connections in places where I thought I didn't belong, and little by little, I started shaping a life that felt like mine. The haters didn't go away. In fact, the more I tried, the more they seemed to multiply. When I started my first project, I heard the whispers again. It won't last. When I moved to a new city, they muttered, they'll be back soon. When I failed, which I often did, they were quick to point out every flaw, every misstep. But this time, something had shifted inside me. Their words no longer pierced as deeply. I had begun to see that their commentary was not about me. It was about the limits of their own vision. Success came slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. A small recognition here, a tiny victory there. Then came the bigger wins, the kind that I had once only dreamed of. The kind that, if I were petty, I could have flaunted in their faces. But when those moments arrived, I didn't feel the need to shout back. I didn't post long rants or point fingers. I didn't call anyone out by name. Instead, I just kept living. I traveled, I built, I loved, I created. I poured myself into the life I wanted, and the noise around me grew quieter. It was in the silence of that noise that I found peace. I no longer felt the need to convince anyone of my worth. I didn't need their approval, and I certainly didn't need their validation. The truth was written in the way I woke up each morning with purpose, the way I went to bed each night with gratitude. The best revenge had never been about proving them wrong. It was about living a life so rich, so full, so undeniably mine, that their words lost all power. Now, when I look back, I realize that the haters were necessary. They were the friction that sparked the fire in me, the resistance that built my strength. They taught me to endure, to persist, to rise above. But most importantly, they taught me the lesson I hold closest, that silence is sometimes the loudest answer of all. I don't need to confront them anymore. I don't need to remind them of their doubt or replay the words they once threw my way. My life speaks for itself now, in ways their limited imaginations could never have predicted. And when I see them watching, because they always watch, I don't feel anger or triumph. I feel something deeper, freedom. Because the best revenge isn't their downfall. The best revenge is a life well lived. And I am finally fully living mine. The truth is, my story didn't end when I reached a place of peace. Life keeps moving, and so did I. There were days when I thought I had silenced every doubt, every hater, only to find myself slipping back into old fears when something went wrong. That's the hardest part about growth. It isn't a straight line, it's a circle you have to keep walking over and over until the lessons sink in so deeply they become part of who you are. After some of my early successes, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting applause, half expecting criticism. When I realized I was still performing for an invisible audience, I laughed at myself. It hit me then. True freedom comes not when others stop judging, but when you stop waiting for their judgment at all. That's when I began to live more boldly, not for proof, not for spite, but for the sheer joy of it. I started to chase experiences that had nothing to do with anyone else. I traveled alone, walking through streets where no one knew my name and no one cared about my past. In those places, I learned to listen to my own voice, softer at first, then stronger, until it became the only voice that mattered. I discovered passions I never knew I had. Art, writing, cooking, small things that filled me with happiness no trophy or recognition ever could. The more I lived this way, the more I realized that haters were powerless. Their opinions, sharp as they once seemed, had no hold on me anymore. The louder I laughed, the more deeply I loved, the less room there was for bitterness. And oddly enough, many of the same people who had once doubted me began to change their tune. They spoke of me with respect, some even pretending they had always believed in me. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. The truth lived quietly in me, and that was enough. There were also apologies, though I never asked for them. A few old voices reached out, some stumbling over their words, trying to make amends. I accepted them with grace, but not because I needed their forgiveness. I had already let go of the weight they once put on me. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't for them. It's for me. It's the release of carrying a burden that was never mine to hold in the first place. But perhaps the greatest joy came not from silencing the haters, but from inspiring others. As I built my life, people I never expected began to tell me that my journey gave them hope. Strangers would share their stories with me about how they too had been underestimated, dismissed, or ridiculed. They saw in my quiet persistence a possibility for themselves. That, more than any revenge, felt like victory, the chance to turn pain into light for someone else. Today, I live a life I once thought was impossible. Not perfect, not flawless, but mine. Every scar, every stumble, every harsh word thrown my way led me here. And now, when I think of the people who once tried to hold me back, I don't feel the old sting. I feel gratitude. They were the mirrors that showed me who I didn't want to be. They were the shadows that taught me to seek light. They were the fuel that carried me to where I stand now, free, fulfilled, unshaken. The best revenge was never a dramatic unveiling, never a speech where I proved everyone wrong. It was this: waking up every morning content with who I am, going to bed every night proud of what I'm building, and walking through life without the need for anyone else's validation. And if they're still watching, and I know some of them are, I hope they see not just that I made it, but that I learned to smile in spite of everything. Because in the end, the sweetest sound in the world is not the silence of the haters. It's the sound of your own laughter echoing back at you, louder than all their voices combined. The funny thing about people who doubt you is that they never see the little battles you fight in silence. They only notice the big wins, but those wins don't come out of nowhere. They're built in the dark, in the lonely hours when no one is watching. I remember one of those nights vividly. I was sitting at a desk in a cramped room I could barely afford, the kind of place where the walls felt like they were pressing in. I had been working 2 jobs, just to keep the lights on, and every night I stayed up teaching myself the skills I thought might open doors one day. My eyes were burning from lack of sleep. My stomach was empty because I'd skipped dinner again, and in that moment, I almost gave up. It would have been easy. So easy. To throw it all away, to listen to the voices that told me I was wasting my time. But then I remembered something someone once said to me in mocking laughter. You'll never be more than average. Those words had cut me back then, but on nights like that, they became fuel. I whispered them back to myself, not in defeat, but in defiance. Watch me, I thought. Just watch me. The first true victory didn't look like much from the outside. I landed a small opportunity, one that most people wouldn't have noticed. But for me, it was everything. It meant someone believed in me, even just a little. I poured myself into that work like it was the most important thing in the world. And when it succeeded, even in a modest way, I realized something that would change me forever. Success doesn't have to be loud to be real. It doesn't need a spotlight to be valid. Sometimes the quiet wins are the foundation of everything that comes later. As I climbed slowly, brick by brick, I saw the way some people's attitudes shifted. The same ones who once laughed began to watch closely, trying not to show curiosity. Some even came around pretending they'd always known I had it in me. I didn't bother correcting them. By then, I'd learned that their opinion, good or bad, didn't define me. But their shifting behavior taught me a valuable lesson. Most haters don't actually hate you. They hate what you represent, the reminder that maybe they could have tried harder, maybe they gave up too soon. Not every part of the journey was triumph. There were setbacks that nearly broke me. I remember one time, after months of effort, I lost everything in a deal that went wrong. The whispers came back louder than ever. See? We told you. Knew it wouldn't last. And for a while, I almost believed them. But here's the truth. Failure is louder when you care too much about who's listening. Once I decided that failure was just part of the climb, not proof of their prophecy, I started wearing it differently. Each time I fell, I stood up quicker, until even my failures became part of my armor. With time, my life began to take on a shape I had once only sketched in my imagination. I traveled to places my younger self never thought I'd see. I built things I was proud of, not massive, not world-shaking, but mine. I met people who saw me for who I was, not who others said I would be. And slowly, I started to understand the quiet beauty of living without needing to announce every achievement. The real turning point wasn't a trophy, a title, or a paycheck. It was a morning I woke up, looked around, and realized I was happy. Genuinely happy. I didn't need to glance over my shoulder, didn't need to compare myself to anyone else. For the first time, the voices that once haunted me were gone. Or maybe they weren't gone. They just no longer mattered. And that's when I realized the secret. Revenge isn't about them at all. It's about reclaiming your own life. It's about taking back the time you wasted worrying about their opinions and using it to build something that makes you smile. It's about proving, not to them but to yourself, that you were always capable of more than they believed. I still see some of those people from time to time. Some avoid me, embarrassed by the past. Others approach me with polite smiles, pretending they were always supportive. I don't hold it against them anymore. In fact, I thank them silently. Without their doubt, without their laughter, without their disbelief, I might not have found this fire inside me. The best revenge isn't loud, it isn't cruel, it isn't about rubbing success in anyone's face. The best revenge is a life so well lived that you no longer need revenge at all. And I am living proof of that truth.